Well, welcome everyone. We are so excited that you all have joined us for Teaching Resilience to Support Educators of Gifted Students. Megan, I'll let you start with our introductions.
Sure. Yes, welcome. We're so glad you're here tonight. So I am Megan Parker Peters, and by my day job, I'm the Associate Dean of the College of Education at Lipscomb University in Nashville, where I also co-direct the gifted and advanced academic programs with Emily. And by trade, I am a school psychologist and a licensed psychologist specializing in gifted and twice exceptional learners. And so, Emily.
And yes, so I co-direct our Gifted and Advanced Academics program at Lipscomb, and I've been a teacher of gifted education students and been a district leader. We've done research together, and I've done a lot of work with curriculum. And we are so excited to actually share some ideas from some of our social emotional curriculum that we co-authored together. We feel like we're a great team because Megan is a psychologist by trade, and I was a teacher for several years, really wanting to know how to address some of the issues with my own students. So it's been awesome working together.
Yes. So, like Emily was saying, we do have a very powerful partnership because we have diverse expertise that are going to support the work that we do together in terms of social emotional learning with our gifted students. And so we like to start here because really we in education, specific to gifted students, we're in the business of taking students who have identified potential and getting them across to this other square of achievement. But as we all know, there's a lot that goes on in this middle space. And that a lot that goes on isn't necessarily all academic. There's a lot that is not academic. So if you go to the next slide, and a lot of the big pieces deal with those setbacks that are inevitable, that are going to come on the road from potential to achievement. And what we have found, or what we know, is that how and whether students approach those setbacks has a big impact on their trajectory towards achievement. So, thinking about what are those skills that are needed in order for students to have strategies to move around these roadblocks that get in their way and are inevitable on that road to achievement. And so, in turn, these are some of the psychosocial skills that might be needed to get past that big boulder in the middle of their road to achievement. And as you can see, this is from Subotnick and colleagues, their work that was given to us a while back. But these are some of those psychosocial skills needed. These are these non-academic skills that are needed to move closer and closer to achievement. And what we know is that students who are stronger in these skills are going to have a better opportunity to move forward towards achievement. So, as we're moving forward tonight, Emily.
Yeah. So tonight our focus is on building that resilience. How do we strengthen their skills in doing this? And I do want to just take a moment to say that we're framing this through the talent development model. And that is a little different than just saying, well, this is how we respond to their unique special needs as gifted students. It's a little bit more of instead of that reactive frame, it's more of a proactive approach of using positive psychology to how can we equip students ahead of time to have the know-how to deal with setbacks. And so these psychosocial skills that we're talking about, these can be deliberatively cultivated. And I love that word deliberate because we have to be intentional as parents and as educators to actually cultivate these skills. And the talent trajectory model, just to put us all on the same page, What this is about is we identify possibility or potential early on in students and gifted students, high potential students. And then as they continue to grow in their talents, they develop competency, eventually expertise, and then they could be creative producers in a field. So this is a long-term understanding of development of expertise. But we are sharing this because these psychosocial skills that we're talking about, the abilities to deal with setbacks, to handle negative emotion, to handle anxiety, and to balance multiple things, that is so necessary if students are going to continue to progress. The higher you get up in this trajectory, the more likely it is you're going to be faced with criticism, the more likely it is that you'll have a creative idea that you have to produce, to share with the world, and others will put it down. So you have to learn how to be assertive. So we feel that this skill of developing resilience is critical for talent development. We also want to share this model. You'll see that in the middle, sometimes these concepts that we talk about, like grit and tenacity and mindset, like these all of these words that have to do with resilience, sometimes those are considered as inner strengths of a person. And we would like to present this idea that those are inner strengths, yes, but they can only grow to the extent to which outside support is there. And so the more that we can offer opportunities for a sense of belongingness in a context, or actually providing challenging learning experiences, providing access to resources. All of this is part of, all of this support on the outside is part of developing the inner resilience. So we'd never want to pose the idea that, oh, you just have to develop resilience within yourself. It really does require that outside circle to make it grow. And I do want to say that this bit about the challenging curriculum, especially as a curriculum, I love writing curriculum and doing things with gifted curriculum. We see that is so important because without the opportunities to engage in challenging work, without the opportunities to feel the friction in your learning, students don't get the opportunities to develop tenacity and resilience. They never get these opportunities to learn how to cope with failure or getting a B if they're never really presented with opportunities to produce things with effort. And that is what we are striving to do. So through a lot of what we'll be sharing, you'll hear us talk about the importance of emotion. And it is so important when we're thinking about resilience because anytime a student has a setback or encounters an obstacle or has some type of anxiety, they have to learn how to deal with that negative emotion. If they don't, they often just they're not able to handle it and they'll just underachieve or they'll avoid something altogether. So we love these phrases here. Emotions can paralyze achievement or catalyze achievement. So as many of you know, if you work with gifted students, sometimes there's analysis paralysis. They overthink things and they're never really able to move forward. But we also know that gifted students are so intense as well, and they find a lot of joy and excitement with what they're learning. And that's what we would love to provide for them, more opportunities to have and experience the joy in their learning. So one concept that we really emphasize through some of our work and what will be kind of guiding us through this evening is this idea of leaning in and pushing through, being comfortable with the uncomfortable. So again, it's when that negative emotion or, oh, you made a mistake, we kind of talk about this idea of growth mindset. And oh, if everybody could just have a growth mindset and learn from their mistakes. But who really enjoys making a mistake? Who really enjoys the feeling of shame or embarrassment? And so we have to teach students to lean in and feel the pain of discomfort. Don't shove it aside or try to avoid it. Feel the emotion. What does that emotion tell you? And we'll guide you through some of this in a bit. And push through, move on to the next step. Allow yourself to experience the discomfort so you know how to reflect and navigate through the obstacles. So as we start to dive in to some more specific things that Megan will start us with, we emphasize the importance of self-awareness. So as teachers and as parents, we can give advice all day long to students, but advice is pretty toxic. No one really loves to get advice. No one really likes to feel like they're being fixed, especially a perfectionist, right? Which I think this is the theme of some of these webinars. So instead of coming across that we're trying to fix them and help them get over perfectionism, this is more about helping a student become self-aware of what motivates them in their achievement. Be self-aware of the emotions they're experiencing when they do encounter a setback. And that self-awareness is what leads to change. And when you're self-aware, you can self-manage.
Thanks, Emily. So we're going to jump into some strategies and applications, starting right here. So we were just talking about the importance of self-awareness, and we can gain self-awareness also from better understanding emotions and the relationships that exist between and among emotions. And so right here you see Plotnick's color wheel, and you can Google this. You can find many iterations of this online that are freely available. But what you see here in the color wheel is different emotions and how they are connected to each other, which ones are closer to each other, which ones are far away from each other. And this can catalyze a discussion to expand the emotional vocabulary of students and adults, talking about which emotions are closer to each other, which ones are very far apart, which ones overlap in some ways, looking at the similarities, the closeness of emotions, because when we are better able to articulate our emotions, we're also better able to control. We have, again, a better sense of control. And so here, also emotions are related to psychosocial concepts. And these are some of the psychosocial concepts that were included, or are included rather, in the curriculum that Emily and I designed. So you can see that, for example, that we have grit and tenacity and the emotions that are associated with that. And grit, I mean, just a few years ago is a very popular concept, still is. But you can see that there are some, I won't say negative, but maybe not comfortable emotions that are associated with having grit. The same holds true for growth mindset, like Emily alluded to. Um, there's still this notion of a growth mindset's a great thing, and it is. But we don't want to discount the notion that there are some emotions, some feelings that are going to come along with having a growth mindset that are not going to be comfortable. So it's not comfortable to jump into something that is more challenging, something that is going to help you grow. But as a part of that process, there may be fear, there may be discomfort. And the same holds true for things like perfectionism, which we've talked a lot about in these webinars. So remorse, fear, apprehension, but understanding the different emotions that are associated with these different psychosocial concepts can be very helpful as well. So this is the reframing thinking model. And again, this is part of our curriculum. And you can see that there are arrows going both across and down. And as you are looking to see, like, for example, how context moves across and how it interacts with self-awareness or management or outcomes, we can start to ask questions like, well, how do we perceive our abilities? Or how do we perceive our emotions? How do we perceive our thoughts? And we have to be aware in order to make changes. And that starts to build on those outcomes. And we're going to come back to this reframing thinking graphic a few times as we talk about some of the applications. And we'll talk about where those applications are going to fit within this model. All right, so emotions, obviously, we've established very important. It's very important to understand what they are and what they are doing. And so this is an activity in our curriculum, and this is where you can choose the emotions that will be present here. But we invite you, and we invite you to share with your students what is the purpose of an emotion, and also what is the need. And this begins a discussion point also. So when you think about the purpose, like, for example, with fear and anxiety, you're thinking about, well, what will this actually do for you? So what is fear, anxiety going to do for you? And you can see we have this one filled in. So it's meant to be protection or to avoid a threat. Whereas you also should consider what need is a particular emotion fulfilling. And for fear and anxiety, it's you're needing that reassurance if you're feeling fearful or you're feeling anxiety in that moment. And so for this activity, we invite students to consider what is the purpose? So, what is a particular emotion going to do for you? And also, what is the need if someone is experiencing that emotion? So, I invite you in the chat. So, let's do a positive one. Let's take joy. And I'll invite you in the chat to consider what is the purpose of joy? So, what will it do for you? And then also, what need does joy fulfill? And we'll just take a minute. I'm looking at the clock and give you a minute to consider that. And I invite you to put it in chat. Oh, it seems that the chat is disabled. No worries. No worries. That's okay. So let's go ahead and show them what are examples for this one, Emily. Oh, go back one, please. Oh, there we go.
You should be able
So,
to use the chat now. Sorry to interrupt.
oh, okay. Well, we'll have another activity moment. Um, oh,
Okay. So do
can
we,
you go back one?
yeah, sure will. There we go.
Thank you. All right. So this is the way we filled in the purpose and need. And oh, thank you, Alice and Susan, for sharing. So thinking about joy. So purpose. Yeah. And I think I can see that in our ideas and yours as well. So to share, we want to connect with others, develop trust. And if we're feeling joy, the need is satisfaction. So, yes, and I'm seeing some of similar phrasing represented in your responses as well. And you can see the other emotions we have here: anger, sadness, regret, not as fun as joy, but they also have specific needs and they have a specific purpose. So, what they're needing to be fulfilled, and also what is it doing for us? We can go on.
Computer's stuck a bit. I'm so sorry.
It's okay, it's okay. So, we also suggest having an emotional toolbox, and these are coping strategies, but we like to give these to students. We're in a college of education. I share these with pre-service teachers as well. But this is an emotional toolbox, and these are all things that don't cost resources and can be done almost anywhere to support your emotions. So whether it's taking deep breaths, taking a pause, even just changing your facial expression, these are all things that are simple strategies that are positive coping strategies, especially for our gifted students. Not all, but I know some may have some intense emotions. So this last one here of even the understanding of emotions, that understanding that intense emotions are temporary. So emotions are fleeting, so they can change quickly, and that's important for our gifted students to acknowledge.
All right. So we are going to walk through this acronym called CHECK. We all love acronyms and need another one in our life, don't we? So this is one that we have an article published on this actually through NAGC. Maybe we can somehow uh, get it linked to participants who watch this. We could provide the whole article. But I would walk you through this. This is a way to coach a student through a time when they're just kind of going through a hard moment. I will tell you, as a parent of a sixth grade girl, I feel like I'm using this all the time on the way home from school. So, and then I think we developed this, like many years ago when she was little, but it sure has come in handy. So, the first thing that you can do, or one thing you can do with the student who is just, they may just need a moment, but when you're able to talk with them, if they're just really upset about something, you can help them sort what's in your control and what's not in your control. There are some things in this situation that you absolutely cannot change. Some of this, it was absolutely not your fault. There's nothing that you could have done about the way the judges did something within the competition where you didn't win first place. So it's over. Nothing can be done about it now. But what can you control? You can control your attitude. You can control thinking about your very next steps. You can control getting feedback and asking for feedback on how to improve. So that's one thing you can do. The H is important. It is hear what the student or the child is saying. Now that almost feels, I know that feels like it's common sense. But what we really mean though is that you're not dismissive on what they are feeling. So if you are especially dealing with a perfectionistic student who is consumed with getting everything just perfect, you don't want to say, "Oh, what do you have to worry about? You're always so perfect. Like, why are you even so worried about perfectionism?" When being perfect is very important to them, right? So they obviously value excellence, or it's really important to them for some reason. So you want to almost paraphrase or mirror what the student is saying, such as, it really sounds like you're frustrated about this. This was a really important competition for you. I hear you. You're really frustrated that you didn't win. You're just going to voice what you hear them saying. Along those lines, you're going to help them mirror and see their emotions. Because as the saying goes, when you can name it, you can tame it. So sometimes students are so overwhelmed with emotion, they don't even know what they're feeling. So you can help them identify, what are you feeling? Are you feeling anger, frustrated, anxiety, fear? So when you can name that emotion, we can go back to what, like Megan had said, well, what is that anxiety telling you? Is it helping you get ready for something big? Why are you, let's think about the meaning of sadness or disappointment. This was really important to you. And so it's so natural to feel sad about this. So you want to name that emotion. And then if needed, if you hear some irrational thoughts come out, like no one ever likes me, everyone hates me, or I'm never going to be good enough, you want to challenge those thoughts. So what's the big picture here? Is that really always true? What would your best friend tell you at this time? So that's the challenge the thoughts. And then this is my favorite part. Know a plan. And I actually used this the other night with a graduate student who was just really feeling overwhelmed. So, well, what is your very next step? So this is important because if anyone is dealing with anxiety, what relieves anxiety is control. And so if a person can name one thing that they are going to do, the very next thing that they will do next, it allows them to establish control, and it does de-escalate some of the feelings of anxiety. So, as we continue to talk through resilience and pushing through even when things are tough, we get to this idea of perseverance. And we know, yes, intelligence is part of the equation, but often it's like that endurance, it's pushing through till the end. It's that grit that we hear is perseverance rooted in purpose that brings a student to the finish line. So you all probably know gifted students who get really, really excited and have all kinds of enthusiasm, but then it wanes. Well, how do we encourage that endurance to the end? And you really get good at doing difficult things when you do difficult things. So Megan and I both love the Peloton bike. We are both Peloton people. She actually got me hooked on a Peloton. And I was just thinking about this the other day. There's cadence, which is speed, and then there's resistance. It's how hard you have to go. And you have to up the resistance in order to feel the burn. I mean, you can go fast, but to really feel the burn and to sweat, you have to up the resistance. And so again, I want to just say how important it is to provide challenge to our gifted students so they can actually persevere. So how do we do this? How do we actually teach them to persevere through obstacles? Well, we're going to walk through another kind of acronym, if you will, and I'll share the acronym in a little bit. But we're going to walk through a way to get students to persevere. And I'll just guide you through this. So everyone, think of a goal that you would love to achieve within the next week, or within the next month, or within the next year. Okay. So I really want you to just think about that for a moment. What would be an awesome goal for yourself that you do believe is achievable and it's meaningful to you? Okay, I'm going to assume you've got it. All right. So now think about all the amazing things that will happen when you achieve your goal. Visualize the positive vibes you feel, the positive feelings, that sense of accomplishment. Oh, you finally have achieved this. Go there in your head for this moment. So here's the thing. What I've actually done here is made it less likely for you to achieve your goal. If we just ask students to name these lofty goals they want to achieve and have positive visualizations about them, dream your dreams, and that's all we do, it actually makes it less likely for them to achieve it. And, we often, I as a teacher know I had posters in my classroom like dream big and, all these positive messages that we bring. And that is good, but we can't stop there, because you know what's going to happen? There will be obstacles. There will be so many things that keep us from achieving our goal, and we may not be prepared to face those obstacles. So when we face those obstacles, what do? We give up. So I would like you to think for just a moment. Actually, let's use the chat since we can now. What are some of the things that would get in the way or would keep you from achieving your goal. If you feel comfortable to share that in the chat, feel free to do that. What would get in the way? Procrastination. Yeah, fear. Okay, family responsibilities. Yes, there are time. So much of it is time. Injury. Some things are things we cannot control, and we have to acknowledge that. Prioritizing. Yeah, weather. That's something we can't control. And the motivation. All right. So thank you all for being so willing to share. So what we want to do is we want to help students name the obstacles. What would hold you back? Is this an entirely too large goal to achieve at this moment? Are there some emotions that might get in the way of feeling insecure or feeling distracted or even having imposter syndrome? Is it stress? Is it just lack of resources, lack of time? So when we can name the obstacle, we can at least consider, is this a controllable thing or is it uncontrollable? If it's not controllable, that just needs to go in its own compartment. But if it is something that I can be aware of, well, what I can do now is with this obstacle I have named, I can now make a plan for it, for when it will happen. So it's like we are teaching students how to handle defeat. We are teaching them to pre-plan for when the obstacle happens. So here's the other acronym for tonight, WHOOP. And this is Gabrielle Oettingen's work. And officially, it is called mental contrasting with intentional implementations. So it starts out with the wish, which is what's the goal, the positive outcome. Okay, so that's that positive. But then when you name the obstacle and then a plan for it, when you think about the obstacle in your head, it creates almost like this negative angst, like, oh, I don't want that to get in the way. And so when that positive emotion contrasts with the negative, it actually catalyzes motivation to want to achieve your goal. So I know we use SMART goals in business world and schools, and SMART goals are fine, but I think they're missing something important, the obstacle and a plan to achieve it. Because it's one thing to have a goal, but you really have to have a plan. So I want to walk us through just a very simple one where a student may be playing the piano and they really want to play this hard piece without making any mistakes. That's their goal. And everyone's just going to love it when they play this piece. But the obstacle is, I don't like practicing the hard parts. It's a really hard key signature and hard fingering here. So the plan is an if-then plan. So if I get frustrated, I will take it slowly and practice one note at a time. So this is a great strategy to help students think about what is really important to them, in what they're trying to achieve, and to pre-plan what it means to concretely deal with obstacles. So what I love about this is it helps a worrier. If you have a worrier you're dealing, a student who worries, show them WHOOP because it provides a plan for them to deal with their worry, a concrete plan. And that contrast between the positive emotion and negative emotion excites the student to want to achieve the plan, and it gives a sense of control. So it is like the best perseverance strategy and I just love it. We just love it.
So we want to take a moment to talk about criticism, and this can be very hard for gifted students. Criticism can be perceived as an attack on even their identity as a gifted student. And so when they receive feedback or maybe constructive criticism, It's important to keep some things in mind and to communicate the purpose of criticism. So thinking about what is being presented as the facts versus, so going back to those emotions, what is the feeling that is stemming from what's being presented to them? So when they're being presented with their feedback, the positives and the things for growth, to acknowledge what was said, but have them reflect. So what are you learning? So what are you learning about what you did well? But also, what are you learning in terms of areas that could be strengthened? And this is also an opportunity to lean on those strong cognitive skills of gifted students and have them establish, are there any patterns that are being represented in the feedback and the constructive criticism that's being provided? And this can relate also to how students explain the criticism to themselves. So if they lean more on the pessimistic side, you see there's these 3 Ps, and this is from Seligman's work. So is is it permanent? Is it pervasive? Is it personal? So when students receive feedback, are they thinking that the areas that are not perfect, are they things that cannot change? So I'm never going to be better than this. And I always come up short here and it's all my fault. So is it perceived that way, which is obviously a pessimistic view, versus when we consider criticism, an optimistic explanatory style? And Seligman is also behind this work. And Emily here, she's contrived a, I'll say, a more fun way to look at the optimistic explanatory style. So instead of being permanent, pervasive, and personal, this is looking at, well, it's not permanent. So this could be maybe one time. It's this situation. It's this time. It will change. So it's not permanent. It's not pervasive. I will rise. It's not personal. And then also bringing back the notion of, is there any piece of this that they can control? So is this something I can control? Can you put more time into it? Is there another strategy that could be used? Is there a different approach or perspective that can be taken? But if there are pieces that are not in your control, those are not the pieces to take action on. So altogether, as you can see, it's this situation, this time, things can change. I will rise. Is this something I can control? What I cannot, I will let go. And so this brings us back to looking at our reframing thinking model. And so this is really thinking about that first and second row. So with a situation, maybe it's the feedback, it's a criticism, filtering out what is or is not in my control, because those items that are more controllable are the items that I can take action on, I can potentially improve upon for future. So we thought we wouldn't be giving you another acronym, but we are. And this is actually one of my favorite acronyms for the strategies that we created in the curriculum. So you can see it's PACT. So it's problem, alternative, consequences, and try one. And so this particular acronym and strategy is intended to show students that there is more than one way to approach a problem, but it's a better way to think about it, more than just looking at multiple alternatives, because the students also consider what are the consequences associated with their choices. So for example, if a student, their problem is they're at home, they have their math homework in front of them, they're bright, they're one of our gifted students, but looking at their math homework, there's a problem here that they cannot recall the approach for it. So they have a few alternatives of how they could approach this issue. First, they could text a friend, see if they remember or recall a strategy that's supposed to be used. Another thing, they could, if they have a textbook, they could look in their textbook, see if there's an example there, an explanation. Third, they could get online and start looking, maybe Khan Academy, maybe another source, to see if there's a good example that would help them move forward. Okay, those are 3 alternatives, 3 different paths that could be taken, but there are consequences that are potentially associated with each of those alternatives. If we text a friend, there's a good likelihood that we may get on a tangent, we may begin to be more social, and the math may not progress as we need it to. The textbook may or may not have an example that is helpful in applying to the homework problem. And then online, well, we could find an example, or we could get distracted with all the other things that come with getting online. So each alternative has its distractions or consequences that could be associated with it. And so, if a student is able to think about the fact that there are multiple alternatives, multiple choices, there are consequences, but they can weigh those consequences in their thoughts to try one. And so, perhaps maybe we start with the textbook. Well, the thing is, if that doesn't work, what we can show students is that's okay. There are other ways to approach this issue. So it shows students that there are multiple possibilities, multiple ways we can approach issues and try them.
And this is so important for gifted students because, really, they're not used to having to actually manage a lot of difficulty. And so if they think, oh, this one thing doesn't work out, it's all over. It's really helping them understand there's more than one way to approach an issue. So this kind of just goes back to just kind of that first line again. Let's become self-aware of what's really happening here. What can we actually control? So let's come up with some alternatives and do that. So the next thing we're going to show is a way to help students who just have a lot going on in their head. Maybe they're overthinking an issue. Because gifted students they are critical thinkers, so they can really apply those analytical thinking strategies to personal situations. And a lot of times when you read like, okay, what can students do to kind of think through a situation and their emotions, you'll hear like they should journal. They can journal their thoughts and ideas. Well, that's true. They could, but sometimes they just need to visualize their thoughts. And so creating a web or walking through where you can even help them visualize what's really happening here, or they could do this on their own. So you just ask them, okay, what is the issue you're dealing with? You might want to think about this right now too. Like, what's something that's kind of keeping you up at night, sticky situation? You're worried about it. It might be an issue with a friend, or it might just be something you're really worried about at work, or, an issue if it's a student, an issue at school. And then, you'll see the whole thing in the end. You could take a picture at the end if you'd like, but, this is just going to encompass everything we've talked about tonight so far. So what is that emotion you are feeling related to this? Are you feeling frustrated? Are you feeling disappointed? Are you feeling eager or anxious? And then what are some of those related emotions? And then really reflect, what is that emotion telling you to do? What is that purpose? What is it there for to move you to do? And then, are you having any physical reactions to these emotions? Like, do you notice your palms are sweating, or is your stomach upset, or you've taken some deep breaths? Because sometimes those physical reactions can help us be aware of our feelings and emotions, and we could be aware of how to manage them. And what's your gut reaction to the issue? So you can explore the emotion side of things. And then, or you could explore the thought side. So, what is it you are thinking? It's really important to ask a student, what's going on in your head right now? What are you telling yourself? What is the story that's in your head that and is it true? What would a friend say? This is really interesting. Megan and I have done research on emotional intelligence. using Baron's model. And one of those concepts is reality testing. And a lot of times we can get carried away in our thoughts where like it in our emotions where it's hard to determine, is this really the reality or is this just what I'm perceiving and imagining? So it's really important to help students do that reality testing. Is this really the case? What is true here? And then what if you had a magic wand, what would you want to happen? Asking that question can get to the root of understanding an issue. And then this is an important question. So to change or comment, to change, I must. So putting that thought into your head, like what is the thing that you can do for any of this to change? Because we can't change other people's actions often. If we have to be the one to adapt to a situation. All right. Continuing to think about the facts, just kind of breaking things down. Where do I fit in this whole situation? And then as we continue to say, what can you control? So what is one action you can take? And then what is another action you can take? And that is what actually alleviates some of the anxiety when you can move forward with a plan. So I'm going to go back to that in case that this is the whole map. It's I love concept mapping just as a teacher, but it's a way for a student to really think through and unpack the challenges and of a situation so that you can be aware of what's really going on, so you know how to navigate and actually figure out a way to problem solve through the issue. And that's what really resilience is all about as well, is going through the difficulty and it's coming up with ways to navigate it. And then when you do that, when you encounter future obstacles, you realize, well, I've done this before and I can now move forward. So I think we have a little bit of time to also touch a little bit on stress a bit.
Yes, so in our final moments together, we want to take a few minutes to talk about stress and really about our perceptions of stress. So whether we believe stress can hinder our progress towards success, or do we think it can lead towards success? So we can move on as we think about this. So if we think about the stress mindset, so it's almost the end of the year. So think about your past year. And this is an exercise that was done in some research that I'm going to explain. But think about your past year. Have you had a lot of stress, some stress, not much? And then whatever level of stress that you believe that you had, you perceive to have, do you believe that that stress was enhancing your life or debilitating? And you don't have to put this in chat or anything. I just want you to internally think about that. But those questions were also asked by other researchers, the ones you see cited here. And what they found is that if a person perceived that, yeah, they experienced a lot of stress during the year, you can see they had a 42% increase in mortality. But here's the caveat. It's only true if the person believed that the stress was negative, so it's on the debilitating side. So even if a person said that they did have a lot of stress, if they perceived that that stress was helpful, so it enhanced their life, their productivity, then that did not impact their mortality rate. So it wasn't necessarily the level of stress, it was the perception of, do we believe that that stress is helping us, or if it is debilitating in terms of our overall goals. So not only is it the how much you perceive, but it's definitely how you perceive it. And that applies to our students as well. And so not only is it just stress in general, it's the type of stress. So there are You can see this kind of looks like a bell curve, but it's our levels of stress and how that relates to performance. And so if you can see, if you have a low level of stress, like way on the left side where we have the calm, your performance really isn't going to be that strong as well, until you start moving up. But on the other hand, the other tail on the right side, if you have a high level of stress, your performance is also going to be impeded when it gets too much. Where we really want to be, the sweet spot is in the middle, when the level of stress is going to optimize our performance levels. And that's known as eustress, which is also known as like the positive form of stress. So we want to be able to find that optimal balance of stress and performance, which is going to differ for individuals, but it's important to determine what's not enough, but also what is too much so that you can find that balance to positively impact performance. And then when we do experience different forms of stress, we also have different ways of responding. So these are 3 ways that we may respond in a stressful situation. And I will say people have tendencies to lean towards one or the other, but it's also situational. So tend and befriend. So that is where we treat it more relational. We're reaching out to ask for help or to help someone if we notice that it's a stressful situation. So we're going to reach out to a friend. We're going to reach out to a family member. We're going to reach out to someone and relate with them. So that's called tending and befriending. The fight or flight, that's probably the most common one that people hear about in terms of stressful responses. And that is where our cortisol actually is released to help us survive in that moment. So we're either going to fight back in the moment or we vacate the situation. We remove ourselves from the situation in order to perceive that we're removing ourselves from that stressful moment. And then the challenge response. So this is one where when we're presented with a stressful moment, situation, and we see it as a challenge, but we are rising to the challenge. We acknowledge that this is a challenging moment, but we allow ourselves to rise to the occasion and take it on. This is, I think, similar to the notion of leaning in and pushing through, but with the stress attached to it. So we're rising to meet those expectations.
Yes. And, with a lot of our gifted students, a lot of them are performers. And they get really uptight about, whether it's a math competition or a musical competition or a dance competition, they want to do their very best. And a lot of times right before you perform, you feel this sense in your body that's almost like anxiety, but if you reframe it, that same physical reaction of anxiety is really like eagerness. And so there has been some other research that shows that if you smile, we love this, if you smile and say 3 times, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited, it helps transform that anxious energy into positive energy and actually helps you perform better. And so we love that study. And so instead of, trying to just calm down right before you're doing something, if that feeling of stress is in your body, instead of trying to take it down, help a student channel it in a positive direction, whether it's being cheesy and saying, I'm excited, I'm excited, I'm excited, or just acknowledging that, hey, you're about to do something big, you're going to do great, this is going to be awesome. So a lot of this is all about reframing our thinking. So along those lines, just to close it out, there is that famous quote, I think, therefore I am. But we love this by Michelle, and it is, I think, therefore I can change what I am. Because by changing what we think, we can change what we feel, what we do, and what we become. And so if we're in the business of helping students achieve at high levels and, reach their potential and what they want to be, We have to help them be aware of all that is involved. It's more than just studying and getting A's, it's being aware of how you pursue your goals. And we think that is just absolutely important. So to wrap it up, we have our email addresses here. Feel free to email us or contact us if you have any questions. And then this is our curriculum that we wrote. These are lesson plans for teachers grades 4 through 8. We call it Teaching Tenacity, Resilience, and a Drive for Excellence, because our belief is we can deliberately cultivate these skills when we teach them and when we provide the contexts that allow those skills to develop. So we want to thank you for taking a part of your night out to listen to this, and thank you for all that you do for gifted education and for students. We are here to support you. So again, feel free to reach out if there's anything that we can do. You all have a wonderful night.
Yeah, thank you. Hope to see some of you next week.
Yes.